She was just an ordinary doctor, working her usual shift in a hospital. But the moment she saw a homeless man collapse at the hospital gate, unconscious, helpless, in a condition that he has no money to treat, she made a choice. A choice that would shock her colleagues, cost her everything. What she didn't know was that the man she saved wasn't just any man. And this act that nearly destroyed her career would soon expose a web of corruption, bring down powerful people, and turn her into a national hero. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. This is the powerful tale of Dr. Mirabel and the patient who changed everything. Leo. It was a long and exhausting day for Dr. Mirabel. The hospital was unusually busy, and she had barely taken a proper break. As the evening settled in, she finally wrapped up her shift. With tired steps, she walked into the changing room, unbuttoning her white coat, ready to call it a day. She stretched her hand to open the exit door when, bang! The hospital's front door suddenly flung open with force. A man stumbled in. His clothes were torn and soaked in blood. His face was barely recognizable, caked with mud, streaked with blood, and swollen in places. He staggered a few more steps forward, then collapsed flat on the floor. "Please help," he mumbled weakly, before his eyes rolled back and he lost consciousness. Dr. Mirabel froze in shock for a second. But what stunned her even more was the receptionist, Vicky, who sat at the front desk, completely unbothered. She didn't even lift her head. Her long, polished nails clacked away on her phone screen as if nothing had happened. It was like she couldn't see the dying man lying right in front of her. Mirabel rushed forward. "Vicky," she shouted, "why aren't you doing anything? At least open a file for him so he can be treated." Vicky looked up slowly, her expression blank. "I'm just following hospital rules, doctor." "No money, no treatment," she said coldly. "He's clearly a beggar. Look at him. He doesn't even have shoes. You think he has a debit card?" Mirabel stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm not trying to get in trouble," Vicky added with a shrug. "Even if we treat him and he survives, who's going to pay?" By now, a small group of nurses and security guards had gathered. No one made a move. They all stood and watched the scene like it was some kind of drama on TV. Mirabel didn't waste another second. She knelt beside the man, checking his pulse. Weak. His breathing was irregular. She gently touched his head. There was swelling and a deep gash that looked serious. Her heart sank. He might not survive the next hour without immediate help. From her years as a doctor, Mirabel knew one thing. Every second mattered. She looked around. No one else was going to do anything. Everyone was still frozen, more concerned about rules and protocols than a dying man. "Prepare emergency room 3. Now!" she barked at the orderlies. One of them hesitated. "But, Dr. Mirabel, the rules say..." "To hell with the rules," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "This man is dying, and if we don't act now, his blood will be on our hands." She rushed into her office and grabbed the first aid box, her heart pounding. As she returned, she tossed her handbag on a nearby chair and got to work. She cleaned the wound on his head, stopped the bleeding, and inserted a drip. Still kneeling beside him, she called to the others. "Someone bring a stretcher. He needs a CT scan after stabilization." One of the nurses finally moved. The rest slowly came to life, realizing that Dr. Mirabel wasn't going to let this man die just because he couldn't pay up front. The hospital corridor was now filled with tension, but for the first time that night, someone cared enough to act. Vicky, still smirking from her desk, picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Sir, she's treating someone without payment. Yes, right in the emergency wing. Room 3. She hung up and leaned back in her chair with a smug look on her face. Moments later, the silence in the hospital lobby was broken by loud, hurried footsteps. Director Richard, the general director of All Care General Hospital, stormed out of his office, his face twisted in anger. "Dr. Mirabel," he roared, his voice echoing through the halls. "You are fired!" Heads turned instantly. Patients, nurses, even cleaners. Everyone stopped what they were doing to witness the drama unfolding right before them. "Leave your ward coat and ID badge on the table right now," he shouted again. Mirabel stood frozen, Her hands trembled slightly as she gently pulled off her white coat, the same one she had proudly worn for 10 straight years, the same coat she had worn through long nights, emergencies, and sleepless shifts. She looked up and saw the hospital security walking toward her, not with their usual respectful nods, but now with cold, robotic faces. They flanked her on both sides, ready to escort her out like a criminal. Humiliation burned deep in her chest, but her face stayed calm, dignified. She wouldn't let them see her cry. Richard's voice boomed again. "You're being terminated for unauthorized treatment. You used hospital equipment and resources on someone who had no identification, no payment, and no medical file." His words were sharp and loud, meant to embarrass her. "People like you need to learn how to follow rules in a professional institution," he added, his fake anger rising. "This is not a charity center." Mirabelle took a slow breath and turned to face him directly. "Director Richard," she said, her voice steady. "That man was dying. He came in bleeding, unconscious, with no one to help him. I didn't have time to ask for ID or check for an ATM card." Before she could say more, Richard slammed his hand on the counter. Bang! "Then don't forget to add that he had no money," he barked. "And he wasn't even carrying an ATM card. You wasted valuable hospital resources on a man who's probably homeless." Mirabelle swallowed the lump in her throat. Her heart hurt, but her pride refused to break. She stared at him. "You'll regret this one day," she said softly. "You'll realize I didn't just save a life. I saved more than that." Richard chuckled, shaking his head like she was a joke. "The only thing you saved is a homeless beggar," he scoffed. "Now get out of here before I pay security to throw you behind bars." As the guards moved to lead her away, no one noticed the man she had saved slowly stirring in the emergency room. His eyelids fluttered open. His body was still weak, but he was conscious now. He looked down at his wrist, barely visible under dried blood and dirt. There it was, a Patek Philippe watch, mud-covered but still gleaming underneath. A watch worth over $300,000. No one had seen it yet. No one knew who he really was, but soon they would. The next morning, Dr. Mirabelle sat quietly in her small living room. The sun outside was blazing, its heat pouring in through the thin curtains. It felt like even the sun was angry with her. Her eyes were swollen from a sleepless night filled with shame, pain, and endless thoughts. She still couldn't believe what had happened. One minute she was saving a life, and the next she was fired, shouted at in front of everyone, and dragged out like a criminal. 10 years of service, gone just like that. Her head pounded. Bills from her family were piling up. Her own personal expenses stared at her from the table. She leaned back on the couch and closed her eyes, trying to push the pain away. She had left her phone in the living room while she went into the kitchen to make something light, just bread and tea. When she returned, she noticed 3 missed calls from an unknown number. As the 4th call came in, she answered, her voice still groggy. "Hello?" A calm but serious voice spoke on the other end. "Is this Dr. Mirabelle?" "Yes, who is this?" she replied, sitting upright. "This is Thomas Clinton, the corporate lawyer of Leo's Associates. We need to talk, urgently, about the patient you treated last night." Mirabelle froze. "Corporate lawyer?" she repeated, confused and a little scared. A rush of adrenaline hit her, and her heartbeat quickened. What now? Had the hospital filed a case against her? "Sir, I was only doing my job," she stammered. "They already fired me. Isn't that punishment enough? Please don't tell me there's a lawsuit too." Clinton's voice remained calm, but firm. "Dr. Mirabelle, your actions have consequences, far beyond what you can imagine. This is not about punishment. Can we meet within the hour? It's very urgent." Mirabelle hesitated, her mind racing. "Yes. Okay, I'll come," she said. Within seconds, a message popped up on her phone. It was the address. The Royals, a 5-star hotel in Banana Island. She stared at the screen, shocked. That's one of the most expensive hotels in the country. Still dressed in her faded scrub uniform from the previous day, she grabbed her bag and rushed out of the house. She didn't care how she looked. She just needed to know what was going on. The lobby of the Royals Hotel was stunning. Polished marble floors, elegant chandeliers, soft classical music playing in the background. Mirabelle felt out of place as she stepped in. ignored the curious glances, and gave her name to the front desk. Soon, a tall, well-dressed man in a navy blue suit walked toward her and gave her a polite nod. "Dr. Mirabel? I'm Thomas Clinton," he said, offering a firm handshake. "Please come with me." They sat in a quiet lounge and a waiter brought her coffee. She tried to steady her nerves as Clinton reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet. "The man you saved last night," he began, "is Vincent Leo, CEO of Leo's Holdings." He placed the tablet in front of her. On the screen was a photo of the same man she had bandaged, cleaned, and fought to save. But now he was dressed in a crisp designer suit, posing confidently in front of a private jet. Mirabel gasped. Her fingers trembled around the coffee cup, and she nearly dropped it. "Wait, what? That was him? Vincent Leo? The billionaire healthcare mogul?" she asked in disbelief. "But he was dressed like a beggar," Clinton finished. "Yes, that's true. Leo has a habit of skating alone for personal time, without security. He disguises himself to avoid drawing attention. Yesterday, he had a serious skating accident and tried to get to the nearest hospital, your hospital, and you saved him." Mirabel's eyes welled up with tears. She stared at the screen again. The image was clear. It was him. I only did what I thought was right," she said softly, blinking back tears. "Anyone else would have done the same." "No, doctor," Clinton said gently. "That's not true. There were many people at that hospital, nurses, orderlies, even other doctors. But only you stepped forward. The others ignored him, even fought against your decision to help." Clinton leaned in slightly. "Leo is furious, not with you, but with the hospital. He told me everything. How you risked your job, how they publicly humiliated you, how you were escorted out like a criminal after saving his life." A tear rolled down Mirabel's cheek. "I don't need anything from him," she said quietly. "I didn't save him because he's rich. I just couldn't watch someone die." Clinton smiled faintly. "And that's exactly why he wants to change your life. Leo has powerful political and corporate connections, and he's already started gathering evidence against Director Richard and the hospital board." Mirabel looked up, stunned. "He's doing that for me?" Clinton nodded. "For you, and for justice." Meanwhile, back at All Care General Hospital, Director Richard sat alone in his office. The lights were dim, and the air conditioner hummed softly in the background. His thoughts weren't calm, though. His mind was racing. At first, he felt victorious for publicly firing Dr. Mirabel. But now, in the silence, a strange feeling began to creep in. Regret. Something about the whole thing didn't sit right with him. Deep down, he knew Mirabel's actions didn't deserve such harsh punishment. But instead of accepting responsibility, Richard did what he always did: manipulate the situation to cover his tracks. He quickly picked up the intercom and summoned the department heads and senior staff for an emergency meeting. Within minutes, the conference room was filled with hospital staff. Doctors, nurses, and administrative workers sat quietly, some confused, others pretending to be interested. Richard stood at the front of the room, hands behind his back, trying to appear composed. "I called this meeting," he began, "because I believe we need to remind ourselves of what keeps this hospital running: discipline and order. What Dr. Mirabel did yesterday is a classic example of what happens when a staff member refuses to know their place. She was fired not because she helped a patient, but because she broke a rule. No matter how small a rule is, it must be obeyed. Do I make myself clear?" The room stayed silent until Vicky, the receptionist, raised her hand dramatically. "Yes, sir, absolutely," she said, standing as though she were in a courtroom. "I told her. I tried to stop her. I reminded her about the hospital policy. No money, no treatment. But she wouldn't listen. She ignored the rules, sir." Richard gave a satisfied nod. "Good, Vicky. I'm glad you understand." At the far end of the table sat a nurse named Rita. She had been quiet the entire time, but her jaw was clenched tightly. She had watched everything that happened yesterday, and unlike the others, she wasn't going to pretend. She knew exactly what Director Richard was doing, twisting the truth to make himself look right. She glanced down at her phone, which she had carefully positioned beside her notebook. The screen was dark, but the camera was secretly recording. She had angled it to catch both faces and voices. Rita had had enough. She had worked at the hospital for years and had seen too many good workers crushed under Richard's so-called policies. Promotions denied, threats made behind closed doors, people fired for speaking up. One day, she thought, the truth will come out. After the meeting, Vicky hurried back to her desk and pulled out her phone. With a self-satisfied smirk, she posted on her Facebook page, "Some people need to learn that rules are there for a reason. Nekuk justice served." The post quickly gained 47 likes, mostly from hospital admin staff, eager to stay on the director's good side. But what none of them knew was that the hospital they had disrespected Vincent Leo in was actually a sub-branch of his international healthcare empire. Elsewhere, in a luxurious hospital suite at a top private facility, Leo lay in bed, bandaged but alert. His laptop was open in front of him as he spoke into a video call with his team. His voice was low but determined. "I want surveillance cameras to be secretly installed throughout that hospital, which no one who works there should know about," he said. "Every hallway, every corner, every ward. I want to see everything that happens behind the scenes." The man on the other end of the call hesitated. "Sir, what exactly are we looking for?" Leo's expression hardened. "I want to know who gets turned away, which patients are mistreated, and every single act of corruption that happens in that place. I want proof. Every case of discrimination, every penny stolen, and especially everything about Director Richard." He shifted slightly in bed and winced from the pain, but kept his eyes locked on the screen. "That man humiliated the one person who saved my life, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." Just then, a notification pinged on his screen. It was the video of the emergency meeting Director Richard had just held with the staff was already being recorded and transmitted to Leo's private server by Mirabelle. She got it from Ruth. As Leo watched Richard parade lies and paint himself as a hero, he only nodded slowly. This is just the beginning. The investigation uncovered something horrifying. Over 89% of poor patients who came to the hospital were rejected at the reception desk, even though several NGOs had donated generously to ensure free treatment for the less privileged. The records showed that millions of naira donated specifically for public awareness, free drugs, and outreach to poor communities had been diverted. Not a single awareness program had been run. The poor were turned away. Hope had been stolen, not just money. One of the secret audio recordings from Director Richard's office played during the investigation. His voice, smug and bitter, crackled through the speaker. "That arrogant woman, Dr. Mirabelle, she needed to learn her place. I've been waiting for the right moment to kick her out. I'll use this to finally get rid of her." Another hidden camera had captured him on the phone, laughing with his drug suppliers. "Mirabelle is gone. That woman was our only obstacle. Now that she's out, start bringing those cheaper drugs. No one will question anything. We'll mark up the prices and double our profits." He chuckled proudly as he leaned back in his leather chair, thinking he was in full control. Months later, the Hope's All Care Hospital was named the most profitable hospital of the year, with a record-breaking 50% profit margin. It was the talk of the city. Politicians, donors, and the media all gathered in the Grand Hall for the award ceremony. Director Richard stood proudly on stage, wearing a fine suit and a fake smile. Flashbulbs popped as he waved to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said confidently, "we've proven that quality medicine and profitability can go hand in hand. This year we—" Suddenly, the massive LED screen behind him flickered. The crowd gasped. The screen turned black, and then a voice played loud and clear. "That arrogant woman, Dr. Mirabelle, needs to learn her place. I've been waiting to get rid of her." Richard froze. The audience sat in shocked silence. Faces turned. Whispers rippled through the hall. Then another clip played. A shaky camera video showed him laughing on the phone. "Bring the fake drugs. She's gone. No one will check. We'll sell them at a high price. Make a killing." Another video came on. This time Leo's face appeared. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the 5th of this month, I came to this hospital, bleeding and unconscious. I was refused treatment because I didn't have an ATM card or money. If not for the bravery of one woman, Dr. Mirabelle, I wouldn't be alive today. She didn't know I was Vincent Leo, CEO of Leo's Holdings. She didn't know I own a chain of international hospitals, including this one. She didn't care who I was. She just did what was right. She was fired and humiliated for saving a life. Gasps filled the room. People looked at each other, stunned. The truth was now public. At the back of the hall, the door swung open. A group of police officers walked in. One of them approached the stage calmly. "Mr. Richard," the officer said, holding up a warrant, "you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement of public funds, and institutional discrimination." He slapped a handcuff on Richard's wrist. As the corrupt director was led away, he caught sight of someone standing at the entrance. It was Dr. Mirabelle. Dressed simply but standing tall, she looked him in the eye. "I know you did this," Richard spat, his voice full of anger. "You ruined everything. My reputation, my career, gone." Mirabelle didn't flinch. "No," she replied. "You ruined everything. I just showed the world what you already did." He tried to speak again, but the officer pulled him forward. "You stole from the poor," Mirabelle added quietly. "You rejected people who were dying. And now, justice has finally come." As Vicky sat in a corner of the hall, trying to hide her face from the chaos unraveling on stage, she knew the end had come. Beads of sweat lined her forehead. Quietly, she slipped her phone into her bag and stood up, planning to sneak out before anyone noticed her involvement. But just as she took her first step, a hospital security guard approached her. Without a word, he handed her a folded document. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was an official invitation to the State Criminal Investigation Department, CID. Her knees nearly buckled. The truth was catching up with everyone. Within an hour, videos of Director Richard's arrest flooded social media. One clip in particular, showing the moment the LED screen revealed his corruption and his dramatic handcuffing, had already racked up over 5 million views. The hashtags were trending. Justice for Mirabelle, Nashur Healthcare. Not profit. Richard exposed. Under the comment sections, people poured out their outrage, their support, their stories of similar abuse, and their deep admiration for Mirabelle. At that moment, Dr. Mirabelle walked up to the stage. The hall was dead silent. She looked around at the same crowd who once ignored her, doubted her, some even laughed when she was fired. But now the world was listening. She picked up the microphone. Her voice was calm but firm. "For 10 years, she began, I watched people, good people, die simply because they didn't have enough money. Meanwhile, millions donated by NGOs and kind-hearted volunteers sat unused, or worse, embezzled. I've watched my colleagues get fired for doing their jobs, and I stood right here, humiliated, broken, because I dared to treat a man who couldn't pay up front. But this was never about revenge. It's about justice. It's about change. It's about making sure no doctor is ever punished again for showing compassion. From this day forward, human life must come before profit in every hospital, in every ward, in every village and city." The hall erupted in cheers and tears. News stations broadcasted her speech live. Even those who once stayed silent now clapped with gratitude and admiration. Mirabelle had become more than just a doctor. She was a symbol of hope. She stepped down from the stage and was immediately surrounded by patients, community members, children, and hospital staff, all celebrating her courage. Meanwhile, Richard sat in the back of a police van, his head bowed, his face pale. The empire he had built with fraud and lies was crashing in real time. The cheers from the hall echoed in his ears like a cruel reminder of everything he had lost. 3 months later, Leo had fully recovered. He ordered a complete renovation of the hospital. From the buildings to the equipment, everything was replaced with top-grade facilities. The hospital was renamed Mirabelle Health Center, Universal Care. Mirabelle now walked through the bright corridors with a warm smile on her face. She greeted patients personally, helped those who couldn't afford basic treatment, and made sure that no one, absolutely no one, was turned away. Her new role as medical director came with a salary of 50 million naira per month. But to Mirabelle, it wasn't about the money. The wealth she gained, she channeled back into the hospital, quietly paying for surgeries, sponsoring treatments, and helping families in need. She treated everyone the same, regardless of their culture, status, or bank account. Anonymous donors from around the world started pouring in funds, inspired by her story, by her humility, and her mission. Thousands of dollars arrived weekly, each donation carrying a silent message. For the Mirabelles of this world, keep healing us. As the sun set behind the newly painted walls of Mirabelle Health Center, a little girl tugged on Mirabelle's white coat. "Are you the doctor that saved that big man on the news?" she asked innocently. Mirabelle knelt down and smiled. "No, sweetheart, I'm just a doctor doing what's right.